The train moved slowly, almost like breathing, as if it didn't want to disturb the wide fields stretching endlessly beside it, or wake the small villages it quietly passed through. Its wheels created a soft, steady rhythm, like a calm heartbeat, while it glided along tracks lined with old trees and slightly leaning utility poles that seemed to listen. I sat by the window, resting my palm against the cool glass, watching a thin layer of mist fade away as we approached each new village. There were small houses with slanted roofs and gentle white smoke rising from chimneys, carrying the scent of burning wood. A warm smell that reminded me of distant kitchens, of hands that kneaded dough and waited patiently. Across from me, an elderly woman opened a small wooden box and took out pieces of simple, homemade biscuits wrapped in thin paper. She broke one gently and handed me half with a quiet smile. The taste was light and soft, just sweet enough, like something made on a cold morning with a cup of tea in a kitchen that knew every corner of itself. We passed a village where children ran alongside the tracks, waving their hands, some holding pieces of bread as they laughed. Behind them, a woman hung laundry on a long line, the wind lifting the fabric slightly so it swayed as if it, too, was waving. At a small station, the train stopped briefly. A few passengers stepped off, others stepped on. A young man entered carrying a basket of fresh vegetables, carrots, green onions, and herbs tied together with cotton string. He sat near the door and began sorting them quietly, removing wilted leaves and arranging them carefully, as if preparing them for a waiting kitchen. The scent of herbs spread lightly, blending with the old wooden smell of the train. I closed my eyes for a moment and felt as though I wasn't just traveling, but moving through a full day, slowly unfolding through small, gentle details. As the journey continued, the light began to change. The sun leaned toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. I saw an old man sitting outside his home, peeling potatoes into a metal bowl, a cat resting beside him, both of them half asleep, sharing the same quiet stillness. In the back carriage, a child tried to draw the train, pressing hard with a pencil, then softening the lines, smiling quietly at the result. His mother carefully fixed the collar of his shirt with a small thread, her hands precise and familiar, as if she had done it 100 times before. With every stop, I felt like I was getting closer to something I somehow knew, even if I couldn't name it. Maybe it was an old home, or a face I hadn't seen in years, or simply a feeling of belonging. When we reached a station surrounded by blooming trees, the air felt cooler. This time I stepped off. The ground was covered in soft pink petals that made a quiet sound beneath my feet. There was no noise, only the whisper of the wind and the faint echo of distant footsteps. I followed a narrow path leading toward scattered houses. From one of them, an open window released the soft rhythm of vegetables being chopped on a wooden board, followed by the gentle bubbling of something cooking. I paused for a moment, breathing in the scent, onions frying, perhaps with a bit of butter, something simple but full of life. I continued walking until I reached a small house with a faded blue door. I didn't knock. I simply sat on the wooden steps in front of it. After a moment, the door opened slowly and a woman appeared. She looked at me as if she had been expecting me, then smiled softly and said, "The train was a little late today." I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't answer. I just followed her inside. The house was warm. The wooden floor creaked gently beneath each step. On the table there were chopped vegetables, a bowl of rice, and a pan on the stove. She gestured for me to sit, then handed me a knife and a carrot. We began cooking together without many words. I cut slowly, listening to the soft sound of the knife against the board, the quiet bubbling of water, the gentle stir of ingredients in the pan. Every now and then she would open the window slightly, letting the cool evening air slip inside, moving the curtain just a little. When we finished, we placed the food on simple plates and sat near the window. The light had dimmed, and the village outside glowed with small yellow lights. We ate in silence, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was full of something warm, something like returning home. After dinner, I gathered the dishes and washed them in the sink. The water was warm, flowing over my hands, carrying away the quiet traces of the day. She dried them with a soft cloth and placed them back carefully, one by one, like a small, familiar ritual. In the next room, there was a shelf filled with old books. I picked one and opened it, but I didn't read. I simply ran my fingers across the pages, listening to the soft sound they made, like a whisper. Outside, the rain began to fall lightly. Its sound on the roof was steady and calming. I sat by the window watching the droplets slide down the glass, meeting each other, then disappearing. She brought me a light blanket and placed it gently over my shoulders without saying a word. Then she sat nearby and began knitting, her hands moving steadily, rhythmically, almost like the train that had brought me here. In that moment, I felt that the journey had never really been about arriving somewhere, but about passing through, about those unfamiliar faces whose stories are never told, yet somehow leave a quiet mark within you, like rain on a window. Before sleeping, I wrote in a small notebook I found on the table. I didn't write much, just one sentence. Some places don't wait for you, but they leave the door open. In the morning, I woke to the gentle sound of tea boiling. The light was soft, slipping quietly through the curtains. In the kitchen, she sliced bread and placed honey in a small bowl. I sat down and we ate slowly, exchanging quiet glances. After breakfast, I stepped outside into the garden. It was small but full of life. I picked a few herbs and watered the plants. The soil was cool and damp, carrying a deep, earthy scent. When I returned, the train was passing in the distance again. The same sound, the same rhythm. I watched it quietly as it moved farther away, carrying new faces and more stories that would never be told. I smiled softly, then turned back inside, where life continued slowly, just as it should.